Okay, today my guest is Professor Ulf Andersson. I'll keep my introduction short to maximize our time with him. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Ulf as a person, Professor Andersson is a thought leader and an esteemed scholar, and finally is a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I'll skip many of his accomplishments and give you a very quick snapshot. Professor Andersson is an AIB fellow and a fellow of the European International Business Academy. He is a senior editor of Journal of World Business and was an area editor at JIBS. He is or was an editorial board member in JIBS, Global Strategy Journal, International Business Review, the European International Business Academy, and has published over 80 journal articles, books, and book chapters, received the 2019 AIB Silver Medal for his contributions to JIBS. He has served AIB as the Secretary of AIB Western European Chapter and a member of the Executive Committee at the AIB UK and Ireland Chapter. He's a founding member of the Nord IB program. Thank you, Ulf, for joining us.
Thank you, Ilgas.
First question, what did you want to become when you were a child?
Oh, that I don't know if I actually had any dreams. Well, dreams, yes, probably something in sports. I was very active in sports, so professional of some sort in handball or football. But that's, I think I knew that was a dream already when I was a kid.
Ulf, where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in the forest, basically, in not middle of Sweden, but south of the middle of Sweden and to the west, in a small town. Okay. With a big industry, ABB, okay, which now is almost gone. Now it's Hitachi Electric. Okay. That's where I grew up.
And can you remember the earliest moment that you realized there was a difference between the domestic versus the international?
I actually thought a little bit about that, and I know when I was a kid, I mean, we went to Norway, we went to Finland, we went to Denmark, and stuff like that. Mainly Norway, actually, and I never considered that to be foreign to some extent. I think actually the first feeling of domestic and international is from TV. Was quite a lot of horrifying pictures from Africa and starving kids and stuff like that. That's probably my first.
Interesting. How did you choose academia?
Oh, that's completely by chance. I didn't. I mean, I have an uncle who did some studies in the university, and I came in by chance from the beginning, and then I didn't want to leave. So when I wrote my thesis, I thought it was very fun, and I didn't know what to expect on the other side. So I sort of clinged on to academia.
And this uncle of yours, was it management or no?
It was political science, I think. But he worked very much as, well, in business administration for Scania until he retired.
And how did you choose IB within academia?
Oh, IB was completely serendipitous. I got the chance when I applied for becoming a PhD. I mean, there was no finance or anything like that for doing a PhD. So they asked me if I could teach. So I started out as a lecturer for a couple of years. And then I was invited to a project where they had gotten money and they were studying headquarter subsidiary relationships. So that sort of defined it. I think my training is actually in organization and management. So, but IB was not something I thought about. But on the other hand, I mean, IB and particularly internationalization was very prominent in Uppsala, where I did my PhD with Jan Johansson and all these guys, Mats Forsgren.
Perfect. Something that is not on your CV, but people might find interesting about you.
Oh, well, I'm very keen on fly fishing and hiking. So I spend as much as I can of my spare time in the mountains and forests, fly fishing for trout and so on. Or I sit at my desk and tie the flies to catch these. That's really that's my big thing.
How big was the biggest fish you ever caught or almost caught?
I don't know how big the biggest fish. It's different in different species, of course. I don't think I've gotten any very big fish. It's not about that. It's an excuse to get out in the forests and thrive and making forests or making fires and being in a tent. But I love the sport as such, and sort of luring a fish to bite on your fly.
But when you go out to fish for fly fishing, do you actually stay outside? Like, do you? Is it like a daily thing for you, or do you camp?
No, it's not a daily. Unfortunately, it's not much of fly fishing you can do around where I live. But we are a couple of buddies who have been together for 30 years, and we go up in the mountains in the north of Sweden. We travel to Patagonia and all sorts of places, mostly in the Nordic countries, but we are endeavorous and go other places too. And we stay in tents, and it's lovely.
Perfect. If you stopped doing what you're doing today, what's the second best career path for you? What would you do?
Oh, I have no plans of stopping what I'm doing. I'm far too keen on this profession. It would be. I haven't really thought about it, but I like interactions with people. That's a very important thing to me. But it would probably have to be something that gave me more time to be out fly fishing or spend with my grandkids.
Perfect. The regret question: what is one thing you wish you would have done or done differently?
Oh, there's probably a lot of things that you regret, but I don't ponder much on that. I'm more interested in what I'm doing currently and what I want to do next. I think I'm much more now. It's not like I haven't made stupid things, but or wish I should have done things, but that's I'm more interested in what I'm doing currently and what I'm gonna do next, actually.
Perfect. And for the last question for the personal segment, what are you most passionate about?
Oh, most passionate about. Well, I mean, fly fishing, as I said, but also the grandkids, and I also like to cook. I very much like cooking, and that's something I get to do every day, basically. So,
thank you. Now, let's say you're stranded in a small village, or you're stranded in the middle of the woods. People come to you, they are curious about you, they want to find out more about your career, your life. Well, how do you explain your research and the importance of your research to people who don't read JIBs regularly?
Oh, that's a really tough question. I must say, it's there's so many layers you could think about, and explaining it to a layman, I think they would be not very interested actually in that. But I mean, if you take sort of the idea of embedding the embeddedness part of a subsidiary, and you put it over to individuals. I mean, it would be the very situation to some extent. I mean, if you're stranded in a pub, I mean, go have a beer with the with the strangers and try to understand what they like and what they do. That's it. So I don't have a very good elevator pitch on this, actually.
Okay. And there's time to develop that one.
Yeah, I'll try to.
Some of the omitted variables or neglected elements of IB research, maybe things that we have overlooked, or maybe we need to remember again to emphasize more.
I think to some extent we need to be better in understanding the individual level, the team's level. I mean, micro foundations, better understanding of how the actions of individuals and people are linked to aggregated measures of performance, widely speaking. I think that is something we have to be better on. I mean, we talk about it sometimes in terms of I mean, these big CEOs and what they've done and how they've driven the M&E. But this is equally important. I mean, looking at top managers or project leaders and how they do things and what spurs different activities among those peoples, and that have a true effect on the bottom line, so to speak. I mean, we tend to put things on a level where it's not suitable. So like entrepreneurial orientation of a subsidiary. I mean, of course, the subsidiary is not entrepreneurial in itself. It's the people and what they do that sort of, in the end, aggregated, gives us something. I think that is an important part where we need more research.
So you're saying omitted variable is the people at the, not at the top, not at the C-suite, but at the factory floor. Is this what you're saying?
Excuse me, say it again.
So you're talking about the employees in the organization or teams within subsidiaries, but not the top decision makers, the CEOs of the big corporation. Is this what you're saying?
It could be fairly senior people in a subsidiary, for instance, but I mean it's what they do. So what people do, what activities they actually attend to, has different consequences. I mean, a little bit. Look at managers. We think about entrepreneurial things. So what can they do? Well, they put themselves and attend to certain things, and it is this attention to certain things that has an effect in many ways. And I think those are important things to bring to life. So the micro foundations of organizations, how particular activities that managers do actually contribute to the aggregated result. Okay.
Ulf, how do you work? How do you write? How do you come up with interesting research topics, or what's the source of your scholarship?
It's very much about sort of the interaction with people. I would say a lot of the ideas and the things that I do comes from, I mean, of course, seeing things in reality, in the press and among companies, but very often it's about how you can think about theory and how that would play out in certain situations, which sort of comes up when you speak to your colleagues and your co-authors and stuff like that. So people that you are, I mean, friends with, not just have a professional relationship to. I mean, letting your mind wander around and thinking about what you've done, what you could have done differently, and how you can sort of get into the next paper. So it's very often spurred by interaction, I think.
You write every day?
Unfortunately not. I think that's a very good quality. I know Nikolai Foss, a dear friend, he writes every day. And you can see that on how much he's publishing. I mean, I think it's important. Writing is the most difficult part, I think, in many ways. I mean, writing so that someone else understands what you are trying to get at. And unfortunately, I don't write every day. Some days I just read.
I mean, I remember Nikolai Foss's interview. Yes, he did mention he writes every day at least 800 words. And I did count a couple of times how much 800 words look like on a piece of paper. It's just some days it is more, sometimes it is just 2 sentences and I'm stuck. It's different, but it does keep you at a certain pace. I mean, it's a good trait to develop eventually.
Yeah.
I tell my PhD students to do it, but can you do it? It's a bit different. What is the next 5 to 10 years of the field? What's going to be the next important big questions, big waves in the IB field in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that the micro foundations ideas are going to be more prominent over the next 5 to 10 years. I think we're going to see people trying to sort of connect downwards and connect upwards to the firm level, to the subsidiary level, and looking at what happens underneath. But I also think that we have started a journey on more precise measurements and being more meticulous about effect sizes and things like that, which probably might help us to be much more direct in terms of how we talk to managers and how they can utilize our research in a better way as decision in their decision making. So I think this trend of more sophisticated methods is going to be an important part of it.
When you talk to PhD students about things that they should be interested in, and when you mention, for example, micro foundations, are there things that you say that they should not be wasting their time on because it has been done, or it has been done too much, there's too much effort already in it, that the benefits, the marginal returns are going to be rather very small?
Yeah, I mean, it's to some extent different when if you think about PhD students, as PhD students sort of have to finish and need to, within a pretty short time frame, come up with something that is sort of a contribution and it's done in a rigorous way. But I mean, generally speaking, I don't think that there are dead ends to some extent, because I mean there's been a lot of studies on entry modes, for instance. We know quite a lot about entry modes and so on. But with better measurements, with more sophisticated methods, I mean, there might actually be more things to say about that. And I think the most important thing for PhD students is the passion, that they think something is fun. And I mean, pulling them in a different direction than what they actually think is fun is probably more dangerous, I think. Even if their thesis in the end makes a lesser contribution, as long as there is a contribution and there is something there, I think their passion and what they think is fun is what's going to drive the process.
No, it's fair. Ulf, so looking back, looking back at the evolution of scholarship in IB from what it was, obviously there's a progress towards something new, right? In this evolution, what did we lose? What did we gain along the way? And what do you think about the path that we are headed to?
I mean, we have become more and more micro, and we have try to more and more understand things underneath. It very much was sort of on the firm level, on the M&E level to start with. My own research has very much to do with the constituent parts of an M&E, the subsidiaries and their efforts and strife and so on. And now I'm talking about micro foundations. Now we're going to look at the people in the subsidiaries. So I guess what we've lost to some extent is a more overarching security in saying this is how firms work. And to some extent, what we've gained is a much better understanding of why they work as they work. And sometimes that connection isn't completely clear. So that I don't know, but I think IB has developed into a much more diverse field than it was earlier, for good and for bad to some extent. I think it's mostly for good.
Okay. About advice portion, the mentoring portion, who was your advisor when you were going through the program?
It was Mats Forsgren mainly and Jan Johansson. But Mats Forsgren was my main supervisor. And
what kind of things that you wish you had known when you were starting out that would save a lot of time and effort, pain and agony?
I don't think there is anything particular that I would have liked to know before I started. I mean, I was eager coming into this project that they started, Mats and Janet, and I did it together with a couple of other PhD students at the same time, and it was brilliant. It's been a learning journey ever since. Basically, it was.
You're talking about your cohort, right? You're talking about your peers.
No, I'm not talking about the cohort. The cohort was much bigger. So we were actually 4 PhD students enrolled into this particular project on subsidiary headquarter relationships in Swedish MNCs. And we set out interviewing 100 of these subsidiaries around Europe mainly, a little bit in US and Mexico, but and a couple in Turkey, but otherwise mainly Western Europe. So we traveled around and we met managers, sales managers, subsidiary managers, and interviewed them. So I mean, I've seen quite many factories actually around the world, and it was a brilliant experience. It was really rewarding, I must say. So it's not that I wish I would have known something beforehand. I'm just soaking everything up, and it has really helped me in my career, I must say.
Which skills were most difficult to develop?
Writing. Definitely writing. I mean, particularly if it's not your native language. I mean, that has an effect on how eloquently you can put things and how you can nuance the language. So learning to write in such a way that you can persuade the reader and take the reader along, so you reach sort of the same page after each sentence or each paragraph. That's really the hard part, I think, in this. But I mean, you can learn it. You can learn. You read, and you try, and you learn.
And what are some of the common mistakes that you see that PhD students or junior faculty make? And what are some of the things that you would say don't do early in their career?
Oh, that's, I mean, as I said, I like the interaction. I don't like to write papers on my own. I need the interaction with my co-authors. I need to talk to them and to develop the thoughts together. I think that's very important. And I think that's something that many PhD students also thinks and understands. But there is, of course, a fair amount of luck here, that you meet the right persons, and that both are sort of gaining from interacting with each other. And sometimes I think PhD students might try to co-author with people that are not really gonna help them out. I mean, there might be an expert in a certain field or something, but that expert might not be the best co-author for PhD students. And it's a lot of trial and error. Who can you work with, and who can't you work with? That's a difficult thing. And the other is probably to spread yourself too much, be involved in too many things, which is more common, I think. I mean, when you're junior than when you're a PhD student, that you understand how important it is to publish, to sort of bring your ideas forth, and I mean, it's a pressure to publish, and you might easily spread yourself in too many projects in terms of papers, and that might become very stressful, because I mean, what happens is, of course, that all papers comes back after submission at the same time. So it's difficult. It would be lovely if you could have one paper and you finish that and so on. But we usually have a couple of papers going, or even more. So finding the balance between how many papers you can actually work on and make a contribution to, and not becoming too stressed.
Ulf, I want to ask you, what's your advice to mid-career and senior faculty?
For mid-career people, I think probably an important thing is to start thinking again about a wider research question, a wider area where you can sort of write more papers within the same question, so to speak. I mean, speaking to something which is slightly larger. I think as a junior faculty, you will try to do more things and spread yourself a little bit. But it's important to come back and sort of stick to something which you can make more contributions to, or several contributions to, I should say. For very senior, I think that the most important thing is to be kind and help out and with younger people.
Yep. And for the sake of time, what is a question that I should have asked you but haven't?
Oh, that I don't know what that should be. I mean, maybe. I mean, to go back to my own research in the sense that I mean, you are not completely able to make decisions or I mean, put your direction of things. You can't do that all alone. I mean, there are always things around that sort of will influence this, and it's really important to have a partner which helps you out, because sometimes you are working too much and you have too much on your plate, and having someone who understands that that's what you do. I think that's important. Maybe it's not a question, but it's an important thing for us to be able to keep our careers going. We need to have an environment which is understanding. You have to be embedded in the right place. That's
Ulf, thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience will agree with me. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you. Thanks.
Pleasure for me too. Thank you.